So I'm expecting a daughter in just a few months. And just tell you, it is one of the most exciting things that I'm looking forward to. But I'm also a little bit terrified. Right? Because I've been around the church. I've seen your kids. I've been around them for a while. And I've realized that there are two different kinds of kids. There's one kind of kid that's just eager to please you. They are just longing to help you to do things, and they're just a wonderful delight to be around. And then there's the other kinds of kids. There's those kinds of kids who could care less about trying to please you. They could care less about helping you to do anything that they don't want to do. It's all about just doing whatever comes to mind. And those kids can just be little terrors. What really bothers me the most, what really keeps me up at night, is that you can have one of each kind of kid from the exact same family. So the kids can have the exact same parents. They can grow up in probably the exact same house with many of the same structures in place, the same rules, pretty much the exact same life, and yet one of them turns out to be an absolute little angel, and the other one turns out to be a little demon. And of course, I want my daughter to be a little angel. But who doesn't, right? Of course, we know that with parenting, most of it is just doing the best you can with the cards that you've been dealt. We know that there are just going to be different kids, different kinds of personalities. Every kid is different. And you just kind of go with the flow. But there are also structures and things you can put in place to make the best of it, to try your best to ensure that your kids do grow up to become responsible young adults. Which, when I heard about a survey the other day, it got me thinking. It's happened about in the 1960s with 3-year-olds. Probably couldn't get away with it these days, but they put 3-year-olds in a room and they gave them one little marshmallow. And they said, look, if you can resist eating this marshmallow for 5 whole minutes, then I'll give you another one. So, of course, the kids tried. When they left the room and the kids were all by themselves, they tried very hard not to eat it. One kid in particular, if you go back and you look at the video footage, he scared me the most. He took the marshmallow and he very strategically dissected it. He took all of the stuff from the inside and ate it. And then he put it all back together like it had never been touched. I do not want that kid to become my accountant one day. So, about 80% of the kids ended up eating the marshmallow. Now, at first, they had all intentions of not eating it, but just couldn't resist. They'd take it, and they'd get as close to temptation as they could, and they'd just lick it. Once they had a taste of that sugary goodness, most of them all gave in. But there was about 20% of the kids who didn't eat it. And after 5 minutes, they were given 2 marshmallows. And those those kids at the age of 3 understood the important concept of delayed gratification. Now, what was interesting about this study is that they actually followed these kids throughout their young adult life. And they found out that those kids at the age of 3 who didn't eat the marshmallow, they ended up doing better on their SATs. They ended up getting into more prestigious colleges. When asked about their marriages, they said that their marriages were more fulfilling. And most of them had better or higher paying jobs. So I'm thinking, all right. Probably by the age of 2.5, I need to be practicing with my daughter with the marshmallows. We probably need a room devoted to this cause. Probably going to have to invest in a spy camera to see what she's really doing. We'll start like 6 months before she's 3, so in case she doesn't quite catch on all at once, we have 6 months to practice, because by the time she's 3 years old, she needs to understand I'm not to eat the marshmallow for 5 minutes so she can get another one. But, of course, that's not how it really works, right? It has to start way before then. Even by the time they're just a few weeks old, you have to go through this process of weaning them away from yourself. They want to be with you all the time, but you have to go through the excruciating process of putting them in their own room and separating them from yourselves, and it's painful for everybody, but it's necessary. Of course, once they start understanding yes and no, you have to start saying, no, you can't have everything you want all the time. Now just know that there will become a day when I'm sitting there, my daughter will come up to me, she'll bat her little eyes, Daddy, please, can I have a marshmallow? Of course, it probably won't be a marshmallow, it'll probably be, can I go watch TV, or can I go play, or can I go to a friend's house? I want to be the fun parent. I want to be the one that says yes to everything, the one that she likes better, right? But I know that I have to ask the one question that her mother expects me to ask. Is it okay with your mom? And she'll look at me and she'll say, she never lets me do anything fun. She never lets me do what I want to do. Man, can you just talk to her? And I'll have to say no. I'll have to agree with whatever her mom says. Because really I want what's best for her. And I know something that she doesn't know. I know that if I always say yes, then ultimately she won't do very well on her SATs. She won't get into the college that she wants to get into. She probably won't have a fulfilling marriage and probably be living in my spare bedroom with a bad job when I want to be retired and living all by myself. Scripture comes from Matthew chapter 5. Verse 17. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I've come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Jesus, of course, is talking about this, the Sermon on the Mount. There's a large group of people there that are listening to him up on the mountainside. And you can just imagine that what they wanted Jesus to say was, the Pharisees have put up way too many restrictions to the law. They've just made it way too difficult for any of us to achieve it. So they just wanted Jesus to say, you're right. The law is just too hard. The Pharisees have just gotten out of control. We're just going to abolish the law. We're going to get rid of it. No need for it anymore. You just imagine that everyone would be cheering, would be great accolades for Jesus saying that the law was no more. They could go out, they could do whatever they wanted, they could party all night long. It would be a great and joyous event for Jesus to have said that. But that's not what Jesus said, was it? No. Jesus said, I have come to abolish the law, but I've come to fulfill it. He's kind of saying, you're right about the Pharisees. They kind of put way too many restrictions in front of the law. But I can't just get rid of it. Because the law is way too important. The law was designed by God to help you to live your lives in the way that He designed you to live it. You can't just abolish the law, but I have come to fulfill it. What He really wants you to see is this. In order for us to truly follow the law with all of our lives, our motivation for obeying it has to be in the right place. To be motivated to fulfill the law out of love. Out of love. So when a young man went up to Jesus one day, he said, "Look, can you summarize the law for us? Maybe just into one law?" He said, "Look, I can't really summarize it in one law, but I can try my best at two." What you truly need to understand is ultimately to love God with all of your heart and to love your neighbor as yourself. So what Jesus is saying, when it comes to the law, ultimately, it's all about love. It's all about love. There is a story of a missionary by the name of Hudson Taylor. He was an older missionary who had been around the world spreading the gospel for all of his life. And as he was aging and getting up in years, younger missionaries would come to him all the time and ask for advice. Ask for advice on what they could do in order to help spread the gospel more effectively. One day he had a group of young missionaries who were about to go out into the world. And he asked them, "What is it that motivates you to want to go and to share the gospel?" One young man said, Jesus commanded us to make disciples to the ends of the earth. And so I'm just doing what Christ commanded me to do. But all right. Another young girl said, I just think about all of the hurting people out there and the starving kids and how much they all just need to see and experience the love of God. Good. It's a great answer. But as he began to think about it, he said, those are great motivations. But I'm afraid that whenever you get into difficult spots, whenever it just becomes too difficult, and you're just going to want to give up. And it's not going to sustain you. So, what I have found, what helps me, comes from 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 14, and he says, do everything out of the motivation and love of Christ. Do everything out of the motivation and the love of Christ. It's only by understanding, thinking about Christ's love that has been shown toward us, that we will truly be motivated to follow the law, especially when it seems too hard. Look, I really don't care about what my daughter's SAT scores are. I don't really care too much about what college she gets into, or I want the best for her marriage and for her career, but ultimately what I want is for her to grow up to become a loving person. The best way I know to do that is to show her what love looks like. So when her mom asks me to do something, and even though I might not want to do it, I do it anyway because I love her. When she asks me to do something later in life, and it might seem hard, I'm going to do it anyway. Serve her because I love her. And I'm going to bring her to church, and I'm going to say, we come to this place not because we have to. We worship God not because we have to, but because we do it out of the love we have for God. And ultimately, I want her to grow up to be a kind of person who does the right thing, not because she has to, but because she understands for herself the love of God. And it propels her to be a loving person to other people. That's what I want for all of us. That's what allows us to obey the law even when it's too hard. It's to dwell and to think first about how much God loves us. Right? In John 3:16 it says, for God so loved us that He gave us His only Son. His motivation was out of love. Motivation for doing something that He probably didn't want to do was out of love for us. When we dwell on the sacrifice that Christ has made to us, for us, out of love, and naturally out of gratitude, that love that has been shown to us will fill us up. And will be so great that it just spills out of our lives in love back to God and love toward other people. By focusing on Christ's love for us, we can fulfill the law of God to love Him and to love others. There's a story about my sister. Over the summer, she had been looking for a job to teach for several years, and things hadn't worked out. So she went on a mission trip to Haiti. While she was over there, she began to really fall in love with these kids and really want to help them. She began to even contemplate, maybe I could be a missionary teacher to these kids in Haiti. After several weeks coming back home, something just dropped in her lap. A friend of hers recommended and helped her apply for a job in a local school district. Now, it wasn't the ideal job. It was kind of a job in an underprivileged area of town. But she began to think about this new job, and in a different frame of mind. Maybe this wasn't just a hardship for her to take a job that she didn't really want, but maybe this was God helping her to think about her job as a missionary. As a missionary to share love with kids who might have never experienced it before. So as she began this new year, she began with this attitude, trying to serve these kids and to show them love wherever she could. And of course, as the year started, the kids were very wild and rambunctious. She had a crazy group of kids. There was disciplinary problems all over the place. But there was one kid in particular that seemed to be the instigator of them all. She just couldn't break him. Every other kid just seemed to feed off of his bad behavior. So every morning she began the practice of when they each filed into the room, she greeted them with a hug. And every day she practiced trying to care for them, trying to show them love in the best way that she knew how. One day, as they were walking down the hallway, this little boy tugged on my sister, and he said, "Miss Duncan, can I come live with you? Will you be my mommy?" She didn't think much about it. She said, "Sure, you can come stay with me anytime, no problem." But then, of course, she started thinking about it. Maybe he's serious. And so she took him off to the side and said, "Look, I can't be your mommy because you already have one. You can't come and stay in my house. You already have one of those too. But I'll tell you this, every time you come in my classroom, it'll be like you're home, and I'll treat you like one of my own kids when you're here." And after he experienced and was shown love, maybe for the first time, it's amazing how he changed his attitude. His behavior began to drastically improve as he wanted to try to please my sister. He wanted to try to obey the laws and do everything that he could. And all of the other kids saw his example, and it all began to change and shift. Because my sister went in with a motivation of sharing the love that Christ had shown to her, to these kids. And they finally began to understand love for themselves. They began to want to do what she asked them to do. And so Christ came. And as he teaches us about the law, he says, "I haven't come to abolish it because the law is way too important for that. The law is way too critical for me just to get rid of it." The law was designed to help you to live your life in the way that God designed you to live. Don't just do it because you have to. Do it out of the love that God has for you. Do it out of the motivation of the love that has been shown to you over and over again. Because when you truly begin to understand the law in this way, you begin to do it not because you have to, but because of the love that Christ has shown to you. And dwelling on that love, it'll fill you up. And love is so great that it'll fill you up so it's just flowing out of you in adoration back to God and in love toward other people. And out of gratitude, you can't help but to want to obey God's law for your life. Let's pray.